What if the person who's supposed to protect you most in the world, your own mother, looked you straight in the eye, or rather, yelled down the phone, and called your sick child a burden, refusing to help because she had brunch plans? My heart shattered that day, but it also lit a cold, hard fire in me that changed everything. You see, my relationship with my mom, Sylvia, has been complicated, to say the least, ever since I was a little girl. And now it was threatening my son, Jaden. My dad passed away unexpectedly when I was young, and Mom, a bitter woman for as long as I can remember, was left to raise my younger sister, Jane, and me. People always excused her harshness, saying it was the trauma, the burden of raising two girls alone. But while I, spirited and full of life, ran around smiling, I never received that same warmth. Jane, barely 2 when Dad died, became my project. I try to help Mom, taking care of her, entertaining her. And sometimes, Mom would acknowledge me, a rare, fleeting moment of affection. That was all I ever got. Over time, something in me snapped. I became the ungrateful child she seemed to expect. By 13, I was working part-time, doing chores, even babysitting Jane. But every night, Mom would find fault with something, no matter how small. Fights became our daily ritual. So, I built walls, a fortress around my heart. I became aloof. Jane, sensing the shift, tried to reach out, but I pushed her away. It was clear who Mom's favorite was.
Jane.
Always Jane. The favoritism was so blatant that Mom skipped my high school graduation because Jane was supposedly sick. But that's a whole other story. The moment I could, I was out. Moved to another city for college, no contact with Mom. Zero effort from either of us. Jane and I still exchanged texts just casually. Years later, I got married, and then Jaden arrived. My beautiful boy. He had severe, life-threatening allergies to 10 different foods, so we adopted a vegan lifestyle, and things were good. Jane and I kept up the occasional texts and calls, though we weren't close. Mom, she heard about Jaden and tried to reach out, but I didn't care enough to call her back. Then my marriage fell apart. It turned abusive, and I got out, filing for divorce. I moved back to my hometown, needing a fresh start. Jane found out and wanted to meet Jaden. I invited her over, and she showed up with Mom. My heart hammered. Mom acted like everything was perfectly normal between us. It was incredibly weird. I wanted to confront her, but Jaden was so happy, so I let it go. For then. Later, when Jaden was asleep, we talked. I finally confronted Mom about the years of silence. Jane, bless her heart, interrupted, apologizing for Mom. She said it was an olive branch, that they were the only family I had left. Mom, she pleaded, pled for a chance to be part of Jaden's life. And seeing Jaden so happy, feeling so alone, I caved. I gave her a shot. Things were okay, for a few months. I landed a hybrid marketing job, which was great since I could mostly work from home with Jaden. Jane was in college an hour away, so she'd visit.
But Mom
started coming over almost every weekend, not to help, not to just spend time, but to take charge. Like I was a child again, living under her roof. I let it slide a few times, trying to be understanding. But her controlling nature escalated. It was too much. I asked Jane to intervene, knowing I'd just end up fighting with Mom otherwise, which Jaden didn't need to see. Jane agreed, promised to talk to her that very day. I felt a sliver of relief. What happened next was pure hell. The next day, Mom called, and she went off. How dare I complain to my sister instead of talking to her directly, like an adult? I tried to explain, to tell her it wasn't the right time, but she just kept going. So I put her on speaker and went back to work. She must have realized I wasn't responding, because she hung up. Later that evening, Jane called, saying Mom was heartbroken, crying about how I'd handled the call. I told Jane, very clearly, that I wasn't going to be pushed around anymore. Not like when I was a child. I needed Mom to stay out of my life, and Jaden's for a while. Jane tried to argue, but eventually, she agreed. Then, a text from Mom, an apology, promising to keep her distance. A year flew by. Jane graduated. Jaden turned 4. I finally felt comfortable leaving him with trusted babysitters for emergencies, mostly Jane. I'd see Mom occasionally, at family gatherings, and things were surprisingly civil. Then came the incident. I had to rush to work. Urgent. I asked Jane to babysit, but she had a job interview. She suggested Mom. My stomach dropped. I was so skeptical, but it was the only option. Mom was thrilled. I gave her the full rundown. Jaden's severe allergies, what to do if anything went wrong. I tried to emphasize the seriousness, but she cut me off, rolling her eyes. You can trust me with your child. I raised you, after all. Still, I handed her the cheat sheet with all of Jaden's needs, made her promise to call immediately if anything happened. She nodded, and I left. It was a 2 to 3 hour job, max. Should be easy enough for someone who just bragged about her parenting skills, right? An hour and a half later, my phone rang. Hospital. ASAP. My blood ran cold. I apologized to my boss, rushed over. Jaden. An allergic reaction. My rage, a slow burn, ignited. I told Mom to wait outside. The doctors confirmed it. Jaden had eaten cookies with gluten, one of his 10 life-threatening allergens. He was stable, thank God, but it could have been so much worse. I promised them it wouldn't happen again. I took Mom home. Jane was already there, so I asked her to take Jaden to his room, stay with him. Then Mom and I had it out. A screaming match. She tried to blame Jaden, saying he must have snuck the cookie when she wasn't looking. But the truth slipped out. She admitted it. She hadn't listened, hadn't checked the cheat sheet. I was done. Finished. There was no way she was going to be around Jaden without my supervision ever again. She cried, called it a mistake, said I was being too harsh. But I stood my ground. This wasn't about hurt feelings anymore. This was a matter of life and death for my child. She left. Jane followed. Later, Jane texted, accusing me of being too harsh. I warned her. Defend Mom, and she'd face the same consequences. Jane backed down instantly. I hired a professional, background-checked babysitter, Nancy. Safe to say, I didn't need Jane for Jaden anymore. Our visits became less frequent. After Jane got a job, we reverted to rare texts, no personal life discussions. It was fine. I understood the dynamic. Months passed. Another work emergency on a Saturday, which happened to be Jaden's monthly doctor's appointment. Nancy was at the hospital with her own child. I called Jane. She answered, claiming she had a work commitment. Then she suggested Mom could babysit. I was about to refuse, to remind her of what happened last time. But before I could, Mom's voice came through the phone. She hadn't realized I was on the line. And she started ranting, loudly, about how she wouldn't babysit Jaden even if she was paid, because dealing with him, his condition, was a burden. Jane tried to stop her, but Mom kept going, blaming me for not being a good mother, for not keeping the burden of Jaden to myself. That was it. I ended the call with Jane. Immediately called Mom back, ready to unleash hell. She picked up, instantly apologizing. Said she was just frustrated because she had brunch with Jane. That what I heard was just her being frustrated. I told her exactly what I wished, to stay away from me and the burden forever. Mom tried to patch things up, but her apology wasn't sincere. It was fear. Fear of losing her grandson. I hung up. Jane didn't even try to defend her this time, just apologized. But I ignore her texts. She had lied to me, covering for Mom, when she could have just told me the truth. I took a rain check at work, accompanied Jaden to his appointment. And I decided, right then and there, that I wouldn't initiate contact with my family again.
A year went by.
Jaden, bless his heart, kept asking about Grandma. It tore me up, but I'd distract him. It was almost his 5th birthday. We'd picked out a kindergarten. I sent out invitations, including one for Jane, but not Mom. Jane happily attended, bringing a huge bag of gifts. Expensive gifts. I felt uncomfortable. I told her not to spend so much. She explained that one gift was hers, the rest were from Mom. My heart sank. I asked her to take them back. She refused, saying she didn't want to get caught in our feud. She urged me to at least consider Mom's gesture. It was the least Mom could do, not being able to see him. I understood. A pang of guilt. Had I been too harsh? Maybe Jaden missed her. Maybe I should talk to Mom. After everyone left, Jaden and I started opening presents. Of course, he went straight for Grandma's big bag. I pulled out a plushie for his school bag, reached for more, and then I saw them. Multiple boxes of cookies. From an expensive bakery. Made with ingredients Jaden was severely allergic to. My breath hitched. She was so focused on a grand gesture, on her gift, that she hadn't even checked if it was safe. It was beyond negligent. It was cruel. I hid the cookies, told Jaden the plushie was the only gift from Grandma. But he saw them. He threw a tantrum. He needed to open a box to have one. Things escalated. I couldn't resolve it. In desperation, I called Mom, asked her to tell Jaden the gift wasn't for him. She was ready for a fight, expecting an apology, a thank you. When I told her gift was dangerous and asked her to talk to Jaden, she flipped. She went on and on about how she raised us, how I was a weird hippie with my vegan lifestyle, how if I just raised Jaden like a normal child, he wouldn't have these issues. I was stunned, but I didn't have time for a fight. I needed her to talk to Jaden. She complained, but eventually she did. She told Jaden the cookies weren't for him, that she'd bring a different gift tomorrow. He listened. I thanked her, hung up before she could say another word. I fell into a deep rut, overthinking everything. Her words, her blame. It triggered so much childhood trauma. I called Jane, hoping she'd understand. But she just told me to let it go. That's just how Mom is, she said. That was the moment I stopped discussing my problems with Jane. My mind was made up. Mom needed a lesson. The next day, she showed up at my door with another gift. I looked her dead in the eye, told her that since she was so unhappy with me and my lifestyle, so much so that she'd endanger her grandson's life, she didn't deserve to be in our lives. She started talking about how she raised me through hardships, only for me to steal her grandson. I held my ground. I don't want you around anymore. Then, the guilt trip. She asked about the gifts, how expensive they were. I went inside, grabbed the bag, wrote a check for the plushie Jaden had already opened. No need to be petty, she sniffed. But I was determined. Cut all contact. No strings attached. She left, disappointed. Breaking the news to Jaden was hard. I told him Grandma was going on a trip for a while. He accepted it. Then Jane called. Hysterical. Mom was throwing a tantrum, sick from crying. Jane wanted me to apologize, to mend things. I told her, that's just how Mom is. She'll be fine. Jane called me unempathetic, hung up. I was fine with it. Our relationship, Jane's and mine, has suffered. Jaden might never see his grandma again. Could I be the a-hole? Update 1 asterisk. Okay, so first a huge thank you to everyone who understood. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I realize now I wasn't in the wrong at all. I still regret how things went with Jane, but she really is to blame for not seeing Mom's actions for what they were. Instead, she just justified them. And no, I won't be apologizing. A lot of you asked about my relationship with Jane, especially with her being the golden child. Honestly, I was always mature enough to know it wasn't her fault. It was Mom's. Jane was always easygoing, trying to balance us both. She wasn't problematic or rude, just non-confrontational. That's why she always told me to let it go. But I think it's high time she realizes that you can't maintain relationships by being a doormat. And now, she's facing Mom's unwarranted tantrums herself. Now for the real update. It's been about a week since everything went down. I hadn't heard from Jane about Mom, so I figured things were quiet. But knowing my mother, I suspected something bigger was brewing. I decided to take Jaden on a short vacation, just a few weeks until school started, to let things cool off. Before we could leave, my paternal aunt called. I haven't mentioned my dad's family before because they were never really relevant. Most of them either enabled Mom's behavior or just turned a blind eye. I never bothered to build deep connections. So this call from my aunt was completely out of the blue. I knew something serious must have happened. I picked up and she immediately gave me an earful. how Mom was in the hospital and I hadn't even visited. I asked her how she knew. Mom had called her and a few other relatives, bad-mouthing me for abandoning her. I didn't want to get into it, so I just said, "It's complicated, stay out of it." She started calling me names, furious. I hung up. I'm expecting more calls like this, but I hope blocking my aunt sends a message to the rest of them. Jaden and I leave for our vacation tomorrow. I just hope things calm down after this. Update 2 asterisk. It's been almost 2 weeks since my last update. Jaden and I had a fantastic vacation. I stayed away from technology, which really helped clear my head. When I finally checked my phone, I had a bunch of missed calls from relatives, but I didn't call back. Once home, I found some mail accusing me of being an inconsiderate daughter and a terrible mother. It confirmed my suspicion. Mom was still playing the victim, spreading a false narrative. There was no way I could reason with her. Jane was my only option. I had a few missed calls from her too, so I called her back. No answer. Assuming she was at work, I left a voice note. I asked her to keep an eye on Mom spreading rumors about me and warned her about the consequences if this harassment from our relatives continued. She called me back that same night. She spoke as if nothing had happened between us, but I wasn't going to entertain that. I told her to get straight to the point. She said Mom was practically begging to talk to me. I initially refused, but Jane was persistent. So I agreed. Mom was overjoyed when she picked up, talking as if everything was completely normal. I cut her off. "Why do you want to talk to me?" I asked. She said that ever since I told her to stay away from Jaden, she'd been suffering in silence. Funny how she'd badmouth me to everyone. She said she was willing to accept any conditions if it meant being part of Jaden's life. I hadn't realized how attached she'd become to him. She even vaguely mentioned it as a way to reconnect with me. As much as I wanted to sympathize, I couldn't forget. She'd endangered my son's life twice, and she'd tried to blame me. I ultimately said no. There wasn't much more to say. I ended the call and went back to my life. The next few days were quiet. Fewer unwanted calls. Fewer attempts from Mom to apologize. Jane hadn't reached out. Things were finally going my way. Last weekend, I got an invite to a childhood friend's wedding. She used to be my neighbor. I don't usually do these things busy with work and Jaden, but my friend insisted. I went. It didn't even cross my mind that Jane might be there. So, imagine my surprise when I saw her at the reception with her +1, my mother. Jaden was thrilled to see Grandma. Mom, though, controlled her excitement in my presence. My mommy radar was on high alert. I kept Jaden close. I greeted Mom and Jane like a normal person. As I headed to my assigned table, Mom asked if we could talk. I told her I didn't want to cause a scene, that it was best not to. But then Jaden started fussing, begging to be with Grandma. He even suggested we sit together since there were no seating charts, so Mom could spend time with him and I could keep him safe. Jaden, taking responsibility. To avoid escalating his tantrum, I agreed. The night went surprisingly well. Mom acted civil. Jaden loved his time with her. Jane and I even caught up. She apologized for blaming everything on me, and we cleared the air. I didn't get to talk much with Mom. She was focused on Jaden. And that was fine. As the night ended, heading to the parking lot, Mom stopped me. Asked if the evening had gone poorly. It was fine, I said. Then she asked if, based on these few hours, she could be part of our lives again. I looked at her. I told her that I'd allowed her to be around Jaden tonight because it was the only practical option. I reminded her again. She had endangered his life. She had never taken responsibility. There was no way I'd let her near him again, even if it made me the villain in my son's eyes. She started crying right there. Jane tried to calm her, to guide her to the car. I knew I needed to leave. Fast. I rushed to my car with Jaden, who was upset seeing his grandma like this. My mom, in her grief, tried to coax Jaden to go with her, but he was scared, clinging to me. Her crying turned into wailing. People started gathering, staring. I drove away. After putting Jaden to bed, I called Jane. She spoke in hushed tones, asked me to call later. So I did. The next day was Sunday. After feeding Jaden and finishing chores, I sat him down. I explained that he wouldn't see Grandma anymore and that he should avoid interacting with anyone outside of school without my permission, especially Jane or Grandma. I think he understood after what he'd seen the night before. Soon after, Jane called. She said she couldn't talk last night because Mom had become hysterical at the mere mention of my name. I told her it was fine, asked if everything was okay. She said things were fine for now, but she feared Mom's behavior might indicate a bigger issue. I agreed. Shared my concerns about Mom potentially bothering us again. She understood. She even suggested a restraining order if Mom didn't improve. I've also been thinking about moving, just in case Mom recovers and tries something like this again. Update 3 final. Okay, so this is it. The final update. And thankfully, this issue, it's actually resolved. In the last update, Jane was worried about Mom's behavior. And wisely, she got Mom checked out. The diagnosis came back. Severe bipolar disorder. The psychiatrist recommended admitting her to a private mental health institution due to her age, for better care. Jane discussed it with Mom, and surprisingly, she understood. She accepted the doctor's advice. The institution is in another state, so Mom and Jane are leaving next week to admit her. I knew Jane didn't have the money for this, so I offered to help financially. But she said Mom was covering the cost. So I backed off. Jane also passed on a message from Mom to Jaden, saying she would get well soon and see him when his mother allowed it. It's a lot. It's sad, understanding the mental illness behind so much of her behavior. It doesn't excuse everything, but it offers a kind of closure I never thought I'd get. For the first time, there's a real path forward, a real chance for healing. Not just for Mom, but for all of us. And maybe, just maybe, one day, Jaden will get to know a different kind of grandma. A healthier one. This whole journey has been exhausting, heartbreaking, and ultimately empowering. I had to learn how to protect my child, even if it meant cutting off the very person who raised me. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done. What about you? Have you ever had to draw such a hard line with family? How did you protect yourself, or your kids, when family turned toxic? I'd really love to hear your experiences and thoughts in the comments below.